Hello everyone. In this lecture, I'd like to talk about composition. Let's begin. So what is composition? Composition is the way in which elements in a piece of art are arranged in relation to each other. And that can be either figures in painting, or areas of shapes, or even background and foreground interaction. And the division of general areas in a scene, we're going to take a look at that, the role of thirds and diagonals, and also the location of the subject within the framing, which is headroom and lead room. We'll also take a look at those. And composition is also the intentional organization of contours, values, color, and shape to create an aesthetically pleasing work. So let's see some examples. Alright, so here is the rule of thirds. As you can see, this picture right here is divided into thirds, both horizontally and vertically, and you get 9 rectangles of the same size all across our image. Okay, and you see this figure standing right here, 1/3 from the right, and you see what I'm assuming is the sun 1/3 from the left and 1/3 of the way from the top. And the horizon line, the ground, is 1/3 of the way from the bottom. So using the rule of thirds, you can divide up your frame and place your subjects or your objects in manners that are visually appealing to the viewer. Let's look at this one. This one is also divided into thirds, both horizontally and vertically, and you can see this figure is standing somewhere about 1/3 of the way from 1/3 of the way in from the right. Whoops. And she's looking, or this person is looking this way, right? To this person's to the frame's left side. So this person is standing right here, and this person is looking this way, and this kind of composition creates a lot of space on this side, so it informs us viewers that this person is looking somewhere far away. The horizon line, your ground, is going to be 2/3 of the way up from the bottom, so we're going to see a lot more ground than the sky. So the focus is clearly on the ground. Alright, so here's an example photograph. It's just a shopping cart, but also this photo also follows the rule of thirds. You see thirds right here, so this column right here, and then you see this tree. Okay, and then in this composition, you also see the top of the cars around the 1/3 mark down here. Not so much down here. Okay, so like this, the bottom third, we're not seeing much, but we do see lines, like the lines of the shopping cart around the 1/3 mark. In this photo, we see the photographer 1/3 of the way in from the right. Okay, the far right third, she's occupying pretty well, and this fence is 1/3 of the way up from the bottom, and it creates a nice composition. She's taking a photo, and she's aiming this way, and so she'd be standing in the frame on the right side because she's facing left. If she was over here, it wouldn't make any sense, right? She's trying to photograph this way, but if she's standing here, then it wouldn't give us the idea that she's photographing something that's far away. All right, so this one also, we see the mannequins occupying a third of the space this way, and then right there, and also here we see, this is a little bit of a different example. So this one, we see different distribution of values. So it's the brightest here, this side, right here. Okay, so brightest, a little bit brighter, and then bright, and then it slowly fades away to the left. So it'll be a lot of dark, a lot of shadows on this side. And so it doesn't have to be shapes or locations of your subjects. It can also be values that can follow the rule of thirds. So if we took these red lines away, you'd find that the composition is created by the light, by the lighting and the shadows themselves. All right, let's talk about diagonals. So diagonals create these compositions that force the viewer's attention to either corners of a scene. So for example, if you look at this painted woman, the general composition that exists on the upper half of this painting, it goes from this corner down to this corner. So like this piece of cloth, I don't think it's her hair, it's her cloth, brings our attention up here, okay, and then to her eyes, and then up this way. You can tell that it's also a lot brighter over here, right on her forehead. So the lighting on her forehead, plus the gaze of her eye, and her pearl earring, and then this the piece of cloth on her head, that all forms a line, and it forces our view, our attention down this way, diagonally. Let's look at this painting. So this painting here, it's a very has some very literal lines in these people's arms, right? So this guy is grabbing onto this guy's shoulder. You see a line there, right? And then this person is grabbing onto this person's shoulder. Okay, so you see a line here too. And then this person has his arm extended, and that creates a line going this way. And then furthermore, you see this line going right here where this guy's cap falls off. So there's a line that exists right there. Okay, and then you also see the location of the people's feet also create this line right there. And then pretty much all of these figures' feet, they connect somehow. It creates this like compositional line going this way. And then you see this line right here. So like this person's head, and then the arm. Okay, and then this creates a line right there. And then up here too, like from the tree, from this highlight right here down this way, and then down this person's leg. So even if these lines didn't exist, you'll see that, you'll notice if you look carefully, that a lot of these elements all line up. All right, here's the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay, we see diagonals as here as well. Okay, so diagonals going this way, right? Maybe not all the way from this corner to this corner, but maybe from this corner, like maybe up here to down here. Okay, and then we see another diagonal going this way. They're very literal diagonals. So no guesswork here. We see two major diagonals. Okay, so like going this way and this way in an X. And we also see a little bit of rule of thirds. This right here, roll of thirds right there, and then this right here, roll of thirds right there. Okay, and this this tower comes up about 2/3 of the way up, so roll of thirds right here. So 1, okay, 3, like that. Okay, here we see a lot of diagonals. So in this case, we see a diagonal, a very major diagonal going from this way to this way, like this right there. And then we also see a bunch of diagonals going this way, like all around this spiral staircase. I would say this highlight over here does a very good job of directing our view to it. So maybe there's a major diagonal here, and then a major diagonal would be going, I would say it'd be going this way. So it's kind of hard to see, but these lines plus this, it forms a diagonal that forces my my attention this way, diagonally this way, like this. All right, let's talk about headroom and lead room. So these are some examples of headroom. Okay, so in this photo, you see our subject. He's fairly close to the camera, right? And you see a whole bunch of space up here. Whereas if you look at this photo, our subject is right in the middle and occupies most of the space. And we see very little background around her, right? Very little headroom between, so the room between the top of her head and the top of our composition. That's called the headroom. Right here, the headroom would be right here to like between here and here, right? So we have all this headroom. And these two photos, they tell us two completely different things. Right here, the headroom is very small. Okay, so this is obviously a very specific, a very obvious portrait photo, and that's why this person's headroom almost doesn't exist. Her head is located like in the top half of the photo, right? So this is unmistakably a portrait. Whereas this one, what kind of emotions does this photo convey? Is she in deep thought? Maybe this guy's in deep thought, right? He's like, there's all this headroom above him, and he's a smaller figure, right? So these different the different amount of headroom will combined with the subject and what's in the background and all of that, they will all create different narratives. Like if you look at this these three sets of photos, this photo versus this photo. Okay, so like this one has more focus on the objects on the table, and not so much up here, right? Because, well, it's not there. Whereas this photo, there's a lot of ceiling showing. So now the focus is taken away from the objects on the desk. And this would be like medium headroom, so this would be like between this one and this one, right? So not enough headroom, too much headroom. This is just enough headroom that she's placed in the center and not much ceiling is showing, and it's enough to take away the focus like from the bottom half of our photo. So here's some scenes from 2 different TV shows. When you look at this scene, look how much headroom she's getting. She's getting a lot of background action, and plus the space between the top of her head and the top of the scene, it's really big, right? So what kind of emotion does this convey? Well, for me, it kind of tells me that it's going to be a suspenseful scene. Maybe she's deep in thought, or something's gonna pop out from behind her, right? We don't know. I haven't seen the show, but combined with the bluish color and her expression and the fact that someone's standing in front of her, or sitting in front of her, all of these combined will convey certain feelings, certain emotions from the viewer. So this guy right here, this scene, he has like no headroom, right? In fact, his head is cropped, and you see a whole lot of his body, more so than his head. What does that tell us? Maybe he's anxious. Maybe he's maybe it's uneasiness that he's feeling. Also, he's probably walking towards the camera. That's why the top of his head is cropped, right? So if someone is walking towards the camera, then that person's face is going to get closer to the camera, right? And if the person's head is not in the center of the camera, but rather above, and this person is walking towards the camera, then this person's maybe collarbone or sternum will be at eye level with the camera, right? So maybe this person, maybe this kind of headroom will indicate that this person is in a hurry to go somewhere and is about to bump into the camera. Also, his gaze is somewhat to the side. He's looking towards the side. Okay, and we see a lot of well, we don't see any sun in the background. It's a little gloomy, right? So all of that combined gives us ideas of what kind of scene this is going to be. All right, let's look at lead room. So this is lead room, and lead room has to do with a moving object. Headroom has to do with people, right? Lead room has to do with moving objects. So the lead room would be the front of a moving object, and its space in front of it. So from right there, so this is a moving car, presumably moving forward, right? So from here to this line right there, that's our lead room. A lead room can completely change the way we see an object. So for example, if this car, if the frame was cut off like right there, versus having a lot of lead room, like that'll change the way we perceive this car, its speed, its direction, and maybe even its intent. So let's take a look at this right here, this plane. Okay, so pretend this whole video is the frame. If a plane is flying, but it's flying towards the corner, if there's this much lead room on the bottom, it kind of tells us that it's about to leave the frame, or even about to come to an abrupt stop, or it's gonna crash or something, right? Versus if the airplane's up here and our lead room is this much, this whole area, then it tells us that hey, maybe this airplane is going somewhere. Maybe it'll continue flying for a long time. So when you create your composition, think about things like this, like where you place your moving object will impact the viewer's perception of it. Okay, let's talk about the golden ratio. So I'm not going to get into the math or the technical details of what the golden ratio is, but the golden ratio is expressed as phi. Phi equals 1 plus the square root of 5 divided by 2. So here's the formula, and this is the resulting number. And if you put this on a graph, this is what you get. It's a spiral pattern that spirals out endlessly. And the examples of golden ratio can be found in a lot of things in nature, but it can also be found in art, because artists will sometimes use the golden ratio to help with their composition, and sometimes they won't, and it just kind of happens. It coincidentally just, you know, looks right. It looks good, but it happens to follow the golden ratio unintentionally. So here's an example of, here's some numbers that add up to to form the golden ratio, and the golden ratio is very and the golden ratio is strongly associated with the Fibonacci sequence. Fibonacci sequence is the addition of two numbers, and with the resulting number, you add the next number in the sequence. So 1 plus 1 is 2, okay? And then you add 1 plus 2, that's 3, which is 2 is the next number in the sequence, right? So 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8, 5 plus 8 is 13. So you keep adding these numbers, and you get something like this, like 2, 3, 5, okay? So 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8, 5 plus 8 is 13, 8 plus 13 is 21, okay? And then it spirals out like this. So the golden ratio is very strongly associated with the Fibonacci sequence, and this can be found in nature. Here's an example of a painting. We've already seen this one, but other than diagonals, you can see that from the focal point, the girl's pearl earring, it spirals out like this towards her back, and then our attention gets focused on her shiny eyes, and then it follows her forehead up, and then it continues going on like this. And I don't know if the artist intended this, but even if it's not intended, it's something that a lot of artists strive to do. It's you know, it's just good composition, and it leads our eyes naturally to the next focal point. And it just so happens that the golden ratio is it lines up with it. Okay, so you can see the golden ratio in Hokusai's prints too, and in this one you can see at the crest of the wave, that's where the sequence starts, and then it spirals up and then down, and then our focal point gets directed to the very top like this, so you can definitely see the shape of the river, right? And then leads down to the boats and then out like that. It doesn't have to be vertical or horizontal. Here's an example of the golden ratio in art being used diagonally. This is anatomy class with Dr. Nicholas Tulp. by a Dutch painter. I forgot his name, but in this one, so this is Dr. Nicholas Tulp, and these are people watching, like his students or something. And this guy's gaze, it starts from him, and then it spirals out. Our attention goes to over here, okay, this guy's head, and then his gaze. I mean, he's unable to look at it. He's like disgusted, right? And then the line follows to the cadaver and out like that. Okay, so I really doubt that the artist used the golden ratio intentionally on this piece, but you know, he still paid attention to his composition, and even if it's like not an intentional thing, you can still find these golden ratios in paintings, and that's just how much our like aesthetics is associated with the golden ratio. We just find it very pleasing to the eyes. Okay, next we're going to talk about the rabattement of the rectangle. Okay, so this is something that you can definitely use more easily for your projects, or for any drawing or any projects like outside this class as well. What the rabattement of the rectangle is you have to get the side, the vertical side, and then you put it down like this, and then you flip it up. Okay, so that's how you get a square, right? You take this side, you flip it down horizontally, and then you flip the other side up like this, and you get a perfect square. Okay, so you call this the left rabattement, making a square out of a rectangle. Okay, and with the rabattement, you can actually use it to help with your compositions without any rulers or anything. You just need a straight edge. I mean, you can even eyeball it if you're good at estimating things visually. So with this one, with this painting, okay, the artist got this long side, I mean this vertical side, and then he basically put it down like over here, and then he put it up like that. Basically got this side on this side and made a square like that. Okay, so this is the resulting square, and you can see that this tree is right on the line. Okay, so this length is equal to this length, and that's how you get the location of this tree. And this is a technique that you can use to make things a lot more visually harmonious. And you don't really need a ruler either. Let's look at this one. Okay, so this artist got this side, laid it down horizontally, and then put it up like this to form a square. Okay, and this edge of the square lines up with a wall right here, right? And then from the other side, he got this side, turned it horizontal, and then made it upright to make a square over here. Okay? Okay, and it just so happens that this figure is standing right where the blue line is, where the edge of the square is. Okay? So it's a very simple and easy way to form compositions. It's very quick and it's very effective, and I highly recommend that you use this technique in your works. Okay, here is a piece called The Death of Marat by Jacques-Louis David. And you can see that his painting has a whole lot going on, a lot of diagonals. So you first get the rabattement of the rectangle right here, okay, vertically, right? So there's a square right there, okay? And then there's a diagonal going through the square, and that's where his arm lands. And then if you cut it up into quarters, okay, this square into quarters, you can also get diagonals in this square right here, and this diagonal follows his other arm, and then the whole piece, this whole square, if you draw a diagonal this way, now they intersect where the elbows are. Okay, so like this elbow, and then his shoulder is right there. There's an intersection right there, and the his little pedestal where he puts his inkwell and whatnot is off to one side. It's not on. It's not in the center for obvious reasons. It's not the focal point of the piece. And yeah, here you can see the edge of the bathtub, the top edge of the bathtub, lining up with the halfway point of this side. Okay, so halfway up, right there. Okay, so like this whole this whole composition is very it just works if you look at it without the lines as well. It just has this like very like theatrical quality to it, and like just using these diagonals and rule of thirds and rebatment of the rectangle, you can come up with compositions that are very interesting. And here's a reminder that, you know, as much as compositions are important, if a work is like technically or conceptually deficient, it's not gonna fix it. And if you're drawing, a good composition is not gonna save a bad drawing. The drawing has to be good on its own. And also, like, no amount of measuring or guides will improve an artwork. It'll make it better, but keep in mind that composition is not the whole, it's not the whole story. It's just the tip of the iceberg. So use this as a guide and to help you get on the right track and to steer you in the right direction, but don't make it like the whole project. Just a reminder. Okay, and that is it for this lecture.